ever visit Crockett's Dallas office when he opened it up?
No, never saw it. Never saw it. I don't know if I ever saw a picture of it. I know that I helped pay for a good portion of it.
Right. And that jet.
Yeah. They should have put some of our names on the seats on Crockett's planes. You know, like this is the Road Warrior Hawk seat because he paid for this part of the plane.
Did you ever? I'm sure the answer is no. But
what do you ask me all these questions, all these personal questions for on a show that's designed to ask me questions?
This is what we call the deposition portion. Of the
guess
program.
That's true. Many podcasts are like listening to a deposition on tape. So,
I'm pretty sure I know the answer. But did you ever visit Watts's home office in Bixby?
No, I did not. In those days, if you were one of the boys, you didn't want to go to the office because that generally meant trouble. Now, in Crockett's case, we shot interviews there on Wednesdays and we picked up our check there. So it was positive. But if you were one of the wrestlers and you were asked to come to the office, it generally wasn't good. And if you went to the office all the time without being asked and you were a wrestler, that meant you were a fucking stooge.
Wow.
So no, I would, as a matter of fact, let's see. I would have never gone to there was the wrestling office in Dallas in World Class was in the Sportatorium, but it was up. Ken Mantell, the booker, had an office on the first floor, but that was right next to the locker rooms. So technically, I was in the office every week in Dallas, but the real office was on the second floor of the Sportatorium. That was Fritz's office, and the outer office where his secretary had the phone and everything. And I was there 3 times because right before we gave notice to leave to go work for Crockett, they had me start coming to the booking meetings, which comprised Ken Mantell, the booker, plus David Manning and Rick Hazard, the referees, plus Gino and Chris, because they were the top heels, plus Gary Hart, Bronco Lubitsch, and they asked me to come a couple times. That was an experience, but that was the only time I was ever in the Dallas office. I never went to the office and at Watts's house in Mid-South. We worked there for a year. Like I said, Crockett had one. The only offices we had in Smoky Mountain were my basement office and the fucking little office in the bank that I was apparently renting so that Tim Horner could bone Pam Lawson in private. I have no other reason to this day why we actually paid for that fucking office that nobody ever went to. But no. Wrestling, the first rule of wrestling is don't have an office.
Don't have an office and don't have a hot secretary that all the boys will hit on. That's rule number 2 in pro wrestling.
Who had a hot secretary?
I don't know. I mean, I know Ed Asner did in The Wrestler. That's the only one I can think of.
And maybe it was Vern Gagne because, Gagne was projecting his promoter onto Ed Asner in that movie. Mike Bullard. How did he come up with a name like Mike Bullard to be the world champion?
Speaking of wrestling offices and Vern Gagne, wasn't Vern Gagne's office shot up by Eddie Sharkey because Vern was possibly fooling around with his wife?
Yes, you are correct. Yeah, that's why Eddie Sharkey got kind of blackballed in working for the AWA in Minneapolis because when there was the rumor, and I don't know whether this was true, and I was not there, but several people were, and they all told the story of what happened. And it's grown since then. But Eddie came in to see Vern to make his feelings known about the allegedness of Vern dallying with Eddie Sharkey's wife. And to punctuate his remarks, he didn't shoot at Vern, but he did fire his handgun a number of times into the ceiling and walls of Vern's office to make the point, is the way I heard it. So it's not really anything that, we need to have outsiders or authorities brought in. It was just a conversation amongst business associates. But for some reason, Eddie Sharkey, even though he was a great trainer and did work some independent shows and et cetera, and stayed around the business for quite a while, never worked for Vern again.
It is interesting, though. He doesn't work for Vern. He gets blackballed, at least from the AWA. Yet when Ole needs new talent, and Ole's... From what I've read, Ole's always held Vern in high esteem.
Held Vern?
Yeah, he's held Vermin everywhere he's went. But no, he held Vern in high esteem, yet he went to Eddie Sharkey when he was looking for talent, and that's where he got Rick Rude and the Road Warriors.
Well, that's because if he'd gone to Vern, to get top talent that was working for Vern, the top talent would have said, well, how much money we gonna make down there? And fuck you. But since he went to Eddie Sharkey and said, give me some fucking big green guys that look like they can beat somebody's ass, that'll work cheap, and I'll teach them how to fucking work. He got the next group, the group that was going to be stars, but right then couldn't stick their thumb in their ass hardly on the first try, but they looked great. Actually, most of Vern's talent probably could work and looked like shit at that point. So